Hello everyone, welcome back to my kitchen. Today I want to share with you everything that I've been canning this week. Now that the cucumbers are done, we are moving into green beans and some peaches, tomatoes, and things like that. My family has been battling a nasty head cold over the weekend, so if my voice sounds a little bit hoarse, that is why. So the first thing that I'm getting started with this week is some green beans. This is something that we eat a lot of in the winter, especially when we're having like steak and mashed potatoes and gravy. So I like to can a lot of these so that we don't run out. But this pile of green beans wasn't quite enough to fill my pressure canner, so I am going to chop up some carrots and can those as well. I had gotten these carrots at the grocery store and we just weren't really eating them. So instead of letting them go to waste, I'm going to can them along with the green beans. I have actually never canned carrots before, and that's just because we've never grown any in our garden. We did plant some the one year and they never came up, but then this year we didn't really have enough space to add extras like carrots. So hopefully by next year we'll have a big enough garden to add extra things like carrots, radishes, red beets, and all of those extras that are still good but not quite as important as potatoes and tomatoes and other things like that. I'm just going to use pint jars to can these carrots because I don't really think we'll eat a whole quart of them at a time. I'm guessing we'll mostly use them in like soups or maybe in a roast this winter. So I just filled my jars with the carrots and then I topped off the jars with water. I like to add my seasonings, salt and pepper, things like that, once I open a jar. That way I can use them for a lot of different things. Maybe chop some up and make a carrot cake, or I could make some brown sugar glazed carrots, or just, like I said, add them to soups and pot roast. I always wipe the rim of my jars before I put my lids on, just to make sure there's no food stuck to the top that will keep the jars from sealing. And then I'm using my favorite canning lids. These are 4Jars lids. I used to just use the ball lids, and it seemed like every time I canned something I would have at least 1 or 2 jars that didn't seal. But with these lids I can use them and reuse them, even though that's not considered a safe practice. I always check the seal, and if I notice that it's still relatively soft and there's nothing stuck to it, I think they're just fine to be reused. So whenever I'm using my pressure canner, I always put at least 2 to 3 inches of water on the bottom to make sure that the canner doesn't cook dry while it's processing. And then I also like to add just a little bit of white vinegar, or apple cider vinegar works too, to make sure that I don't get a lot of mineral deposits on my jars, because that can be really hard to wash off. And then I'm going to put my green beans on the bottom and layer the carrots on the top. I always do this when I'm mixing quarts and pints because the quarts are larger. I guess it wouldn't really matter, that's just kind of how I like to do it. And then I always process the quarts and pints together the same as I would if it was just quarts. I had more canning to do on this day, and I wanted a quick and easy dinner. So I'm going to put a beef tongue in the oven and just cook it like I would a roast. That way, once it's dinner time, I can just pull it out and we can eat dinner without me having to worry about cleaning off my counters, cleaning off my stovetop, and fixing something from scratch. I am going to use up some leftovers and some other food that I found in my fridge and pantry that needs to be used up. I had a little bit of celery left that was wilted and not looking so great, so I chopped that up and added that to my pan. And then I also found some very wrinkly potatoes in the bottom of my bin that looked like they should have been planted, but I just peeled those off and added those as well. I also found one lonely carrot in the back of the fridge that was starting to look a little rough, so I peeled that and added that as well. I had some ham broth left in the fridge from a few days ago when I made a scalloped potatoes and ham casserole, so I added that for my liquid, and that wasn't quite enough liquid, so I added a little bit of juice from a jar of green beans to make sure that everything was covered so that it wouldn't cook dry while it was in the oven. I also added lots of onions and salt and pepper, and then I baked this for about 4 to 5 hours on 300 degrees. After I had gotten dinner out of the way, I started on my peach jam. We had already done about 1.5 bushels of peaches, but one thing that I didn't make was some peach jam, and that is one of our favorites, so I decided to do some more peaches. These peaches we got from a local fruit farm, and they peeled a lot easier than the other ones had. So I like to use Pamuna's pectin to make all of my jams and jellies because it doesn't require as much sugar as you would need if you were using something like Sure-Gel. And what I like about this is you can add as much sugar or as little sugar as you want. Kind of depends on whatever your family likes. I find that peaches are already really sweet, so I just stuck with 1 cup for this recipe. Most jam recipes using Pamuna's pectin are pretty much the same. I always start with 4 cups of fruit, and then I just cook that until it's soft. And then to that, I add my lemon juice and my calcium water. Once this is boiling, I add my sugar and pectin, and then I bring that back to a boil, and then that is all that I need to do to make the jam. I like to have my water in my canner heating with the jars and the lids. That way everything is hot. And then this jam only needed to be processed for 10 minutes, so it was a relatively quick and easy canning project for this day. Moving on to the next day, I wanted to make something with the rest of my peaches, and I had 12 peaches left exactly, so that was the perfect amount to make some peach salsa. I also have a lot of peppers in my garden, both green peppers and jalapenos, so this was the perfect thing for me to make to use up some of those things in my garden and the rest of these peaches. I started by peeling my peaches and chopping them up. I like my salsa really thick and chunky, so I always start with a little bit bigger pieces of fruit and vegetables because we are going to cook this, and that will cook everything down a little bit, and then once we water bath it, that will cook it down some more. But if you want a salsa that's not quite as chunky, you could always chop everything smaller or use an immersion blender later to kind of blend everything up, and that will make a thicker salsa as well. This is a ball canning recipe, and even though I did follow the instructions and the ingredient amounts as well as I could, there was some things that I didn't have, like the ginger, and then I forgot to add garlic, so I will leave the full recipe linked in the description box below if you want to try to make this for your family. I wanted to use up all of my jalapeno peppers, so I just added all of them to the salsa. I did take the seeds out, so that would make it not quite as spicy. And then later when I was putting the salsa in jars, I realized that I forgot to put in the red pepper flakes, so I added some of those as well without really tasting the salsa first. So this ended up being really spicy, which I love because I love spicy food, but the rest of my family might not appreciate it quite as much. So next time I make this, I'll probably just add a little bit of jalapenos and leave out the red pepper flakes entirely. I let my peach salsa process for 20 minutes before I took the jars out of the canner and put my kitchen to bed for the night. We have been canning a lot of other things as well, like pizza sauce and sweet corn. I'm just trying to get all of my jars full before winter comes. That way I can relax and spend my time doing some other fun projects. Even though we have been doing a lot of canning, there's still other things that need to be done every day, like cooking and dishes. A few other things that I like to keep going in my kitchen is sourdough bread and my water kefir. These things don't need to be done every day, but every few days I need to start a new batch of sourdough or strain my water kefir grains and get a second ferment going. I used to think that making sourdough would be really hard to learn and kind of difficult to figure out what works and what doesn't, but I realized after I started that it's probably one of the easiest things that I ever did in my kitchen, just because of the flexibility. I can mix my dough together in the morning and then do some stretch and folds before I let it ferment. And then later in the afternoon I can shape it, and at that point I can either put it in the fridge if we need to leave the house, or I can just bake it a few hours later. My favorite way to make sourdough the last while is to start it in the afternoon, and then before I go to bed, shape everything and put it in the fridge, and then bake it the next morning. This gives it a really wonderful texture, and it just adds a lot more flavor without it being too sour. Well, I hope that you are enjoying what's left of our beautiful summer. I will see you back here next week for another video.